There's something strange about psychologists. You can sit in front of them completely overwhelmed, emotionally collapsing, mentally exhausted, and somehow they remain calm. Not cold, not robotic. Calm, stable, focused. As if they understand something about the human mind that most people never learn. But here's the disturbing part. Psychologists are not mentally invincible. They feel stress, they feel anxiety, they overthink, they struggle. The difference is, they've trained themselves to interact with their own mind differently. And once you understand the techniques they use daily, you start realizing something uncomfortable. Most people are not controlled by reality. They are controlled by interpretation, by unconscious emotional reactions, by mental patterns they never learned to question. In this video, you'll discover 7 psychological techniques therapists unconsciously use every day to regulate emotions, reduce anxiety, and regain mental control. And the scary part? Once you see these patterns, you'll start noticing how often your own mind has been working against you. The first technique is called cognitive reframing, and it quietly changes everything. Most people assume their thoughts are reality. Psychologists know their interpretations. That single distinction changes the entire experience of life. Imagine you send a message, and someone doesn't reply. Most people instantly create a story. They're ignoring me. They're upset. I said something wrong. Your brain fills the silence with threat, but psychologists are trained to interrupt that process. Instead of asking, "What if this is bad?" they ask, "What else could this mean?" Maybe the person is busy, maybe they forgot, maybe it has nothing to do with you. The situation didn't change, only the interpretation changed, and suddenly, the anxiety weakens. Most suffering begins when the brain mistakes assumptions for facts. The second technique is something most people almost never do: observing emotions without instantly obeying them. Psychologists call this meta-awareness, the ability to watch your own mind. Most people become anger, become anxiety, become stress. Therapists learn to step back internally and notice, "I'm experiencing frustration right now." That tiny separation matters more than you think. Because the moment you observe an emotion, instead of becoming consumed by it, you regain psychological distance, and distance creates control. This is why emotionally intelligent people often appear calmer under pressure, not because they feel less, but because they identify less with every emotion that enters their mind. The third technique is deceptively simple: pause before reacting. Modern life trains impulsive behavior: notification, reaction, comment, reaction, emotion, reaction, no space, no awareness, no control. Psychologists intentionally create delay, especially during emotionally charged moments. Because neuroscience shows something important: your emotional brain reacts faster than your rational brain. Meaning, your first impulse is often not your wisest response. So they pause, a breath, a few seconds, a moment of silence, and in that small gap, the nervous system begins calming down, the reaction weakens, and logic returns online. Most people ruin relationships because they respond emotionally before thinking clearly. The pause interrupts self-destruction. The fourth technique might be the most powerful: behavioral experiments. Psychologists don't automatically trust beliefs, they test them. Most people say things like, "I'm socially awkward," "I can't focus," "I'll fail anyway." But those aren't facts. They're conclusions repeated so many times that they started feeling real. Therapists challenge beliefs through action, small experiments, tiny controlled risks. You think you're bad at conversations. Start one conversation. You think you lack discipline. Wake up 15 minutes earlier for a week. Data matters more than identity, because most limitations are psychologically rehearsed, not objectively true. The fifth technique is emotional labeling, and it sounds almost too simple to work until you understand what happens neurologically. Most people use vague emotional language. "I feel bad." "I'm stressed." "I'm overwhelmed." Psychologists become more precise because naming emotions reduces emotional chaos. Instead of bad, they identify disappointment, envy, embarrassment, mental fatigue, fear, resentment, uncertainty. Why does this matter? Because vague emotions feel uncontrollable, specific emotions feel manageable. Research consistently shows that labeling emotions reduces activity in the amygdala, the brain's threat center. Meaning, the moment you clearly name an emotion, you partially deactivate its intensity. The sixth technique is something many people secretly resist: self-compassion. Because deep down, many people believe self-criticism creates growth. But psychologists understand something counterintuitive. Constant self-hatred destroys consistency. If your internal voice sounds like an enemy, your nervous system eventually stops trusting itself. Therapists don't remove accountability. They remove unnecessary psychological violence. Instead of, "I'm pathetic," they think, "I'm struggling right now." Instead of, "I always fail," they think, "This is difficult but temporary." And over time, that internal environment changes behavior because transformation becomes sustainable only when the mind stops operating in survival mode. And finally, the seventh technique: mental check-ins. Most people monitor their phone battery more than their mental state. Psychologists regularly pause and ask, "How am I actually doing?" Not performative positivity, not fake motivation, real awareness. What's draining me? What's energizing me? What have I been avoiding emotionally? Because ignored stress does not disappear, it accumulates quietly until burnout feels sudden, even though it was building for months. Awareness is preventative psychology. The earlier you notice mental patterns and the easier they are to change. Here's the truth most people never realize: mental strength is not built through motivation, it's built through awareness. Psychologists are not immune to emotional chaos. They've simply trained themselves to recognize mental patterns before those patterns take control. And once you begin practicing these techniques consistently, you start noticing something strange. Your emotions stop feeling like prisons, your thoughts stop feeling absolute, and for the first time, you realize you are not your first reaction. You are the awareness behind it. If this video changed the way you see your own mind, subscribe to Psyche Decoded, because the moment you understand the hidden mechanics of human behavior, you stop being controlled by them.